He insists he wants to meld one nation. But looking at how Leave and Remain seats voted differently, you see how difficult that might be. If you look at the seats that voted strongly for Leave, 60% plus, there was a much bigger swing to the Tories here. If it was up to them, if all the seats behaved like these, the Tories would have 118 majority now. Look at seats that voted strongly for Remain in the referendum and the swings are different. If it was down to them, the Tories would be clinging on with a majority of 6. As it is, he's back with 80. A whole new voter base he must please. A timetable for EU trade negotiations many think unachievable. A massive majority that gives a leader authority to act. Not seen in this place for some years.
See, here's a UK voter intention by age, so you can see the Labour votes there, younger. I wanted you to see older. Abandoning ship. Gert Wheeler says Nexit next. So here we have the EU as going over.
I'm hoping that is
Merkel
correct.
at the top of the staff, regulations, globalist, and then Brexit. And I remember saying, "Sail away, Britain. Sail far, far away." Hey guys, welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We're your hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today is Friday the 13th, which means that yesterday was Thursday the 12th, which means we had a UK election, and it was absolutely fantastic, and I just feel like singing, celebrate good times, come on, da, 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 da. There's a party going on right here. No, actually it's over there, but yeah. And here, all right, guys. So, basement, right, we are so excited for you guys over there. We watched this all last night. Of course, it would have been really fun to just go live as the results were coming in, but you were sleeping, so what good would it do? Okay. Come back with me. I'm with it. All right, so with you. So what happened yesterday in that election? We want to break that down for you because it wasn't just that the Tories won. Okay, it has something to listen. I personally don't care about the Tories, and I don't think most people in Britain do.
Labour lost,
and it's not so much the Labour lost either.
Socialism lost. Evil.
The EU lost. This was, sometimes you get stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I know a lot of people didn't want to vote for Conservatives, but what they were voting, they weren't voting for the Conservative Party. They weren't voting for the Tory Party. If you don't know if you're just joining us in America, in 2016, Nigel Farage had convinced the British government to put on a ballot a people's vote if they would stay in the totalitarian globalist European Union or they would leave. Well,
70% of people turned out to vote.
The people voted to leave the EU. But the globalists and Theresa May were thwarting that for 3 years. And people were just fatigued and they were tired. And there were a lot of people, the Labour left, the left-leaning areas were supposed to be the working class areas. They voted to leave. They voted to leave the European Union, and their leader, Jeremy Corbyn, in the beginning was behind it. That he said he wanted to leave too. But as time went on, he backed a second referendum to get a second vote of the people, and it was just going to be bogged down and mired down, and the people had enough. And if you've been on Twitter, you find that all kinds of crazy things have been happening. The social justice warriors out there. You have the Lib Dem candidate. She is a smaller party. There's Labour, Conservative, Lib Dems, and then there's the Scottish National Party. Those are like the main parties. And then you have Northern Ireland, the DUP. Those are the main parties. Nigel's Brexit Party. I'm going to tell you what Nigel's Brexit Party crazy things
accomplished. They actually accomplished something
Nigel
huge.
Farage is going to go down in history, as I was telling everybody last night, as the most underrated British politician in history. He is the most humble. He's the most resolute. He's the most steadfast politician. I'm sure since, Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher, I'm sure. He's up there with Margaret Thatcher.
Speaking of Thatcher, don't the Conservative Party have like a bigger lead than even when Thatcher was in?
No.
I know that
She
there
had,
was
like,
something that they were comparing to Thatcher.
Yeah,
was
since
bigger than
Thatcher.
her.
I think
No, it was even
Thatcher.
bigger than her, though. I don't remember what it was. Maybe if Barry's in the comments, he can correct me on this.
So what happened last night is these numbers were coming in, the shock and the awe and watching the globalists going down, watching the globalists cry tears, watching celebrities like Hugh Grant crying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to a video of a very tired Nigel Farage this morning on Good Morning Britain. But know that he's been up all night as this video is playing. So give him some slack.
Wait, we don't have any volume, do we?
Nigel Farage, what he did was he
shocked.
put forth 600 candidates, and he wanted to make
awe,
and watching Boris Johnson didn't do that. He pulled out even more, and he ran the candidates in the labor heartlands.
Yeah.
Knowing that, very interestingly enough, that in these labor heartlands that wanted to leave, a lot of those people couldn't vote for Boris Johnson. They wouldn't vote for Boris Johnson.
Right.
And at that point,
they can't vote conservative at all.
At that point they couldn't stomach Jeremy Corbyn either. So there were some, to give you an example, since there's like 600 constituencies here, and you guys can give me the exact number. You could have the Conservatives winning by 2% over Labour, but then the Brexit Party would get like 8%.
Right.
So that you know that the Brexit Party took some of the chunk out of Labour, gifting these seats to Boris Johnson, hoping, as Nigel Farage hopes, that the real Brexit will get done. So here's Nigel.
In a way, it's a very good morning.
Still, hang on here. Let me show you how to do this. So pause that.
I can do it.
Okay. And you don't have any power. Should I go get it?
Any power? Oh yeah, I guess I wouldn't hurt.
You're about to die.
No. Sorry guys, I'm gonna get this microphone. No, it's not connecting. My input devices don't.
Your Bluetooth turned
Ah. Michelle just bring down the power. I'll keep talking and Michelle bringing up the power. Michelle can bring up this video. I do the volume. All right, so Boris Johnson, and I'll have Michelle bring up that Nigel video and the history there. No more miserable threats of a second referendum. I got it. As Tories secure biggest majority since Thatcher. Go ahead and bring up that Nigel video for me.
Since Thatcher,
Yeah.
I was close. I knew it
Prime
had
Minister
something to
Boris
do with
Johnson
her.
has said that his House of Commons majority, he will said with his House of Commons majority, he will deliver Brexit by January 31st, 2020. And he has no reason to. He doesn't have anybody stopping him. This summer, he had a ton of people. He had people in his own Conservative Party, backing out on him, pulling out on him. With just two constituencies left to call, this was last night, the Conservative Party will have between a 78 and an 80 seat majority in the House of Commons, giving the party its biggest majority since Margaret Thatcher was re-elected in 1987. Meanwhile, Labour has had its worst election since election results since 1989. In his speech from Westminster on Friday morning, I'm going to play a piece of that. Prime Minister said in his characteristic verbosity and humor, "We did it. We pulled it off. We broke the deadlock. We ended the gridlock. We smashed the roadblock." Okay, go ahead and play the video.
Okay.
As I get some power here.
It's a very good morning for you. And in a way, it's not a very good morning at all.
Well, look, I mean, the thought that if we stood candidates in the south of England and southwest of England and allowed the Lib Dems to win lots of seats, which they would have done, that would have taken us towards a second referendum. I think that would have been agony for the country, disastrous for trust in democracy. So I took a big strategic decision. I said we'd fight Labour. I said all the way through we'd dig chunks out of Labour that would actually make it easier for Boris Johnson, and indeed that's what's happened. So look, as far as Boris Johnson's deal is concerned, I think it's dreadful, but at least we're going to get Brexit. I'd call it half a loaf.
But Nigel, I mean, half a loaf maybe, but you hate the deal, you don't think it represents Brexit, your party's won 0 seats. With the best will in the world, it's been a failure, hasn't it?
No, not really. I mean, look, you know, if you go back to February, Piers, Brexit was stuck in the weeds, a second referendum was coming down the tracks, hundreds of thousands of people marching in London, and most of us thought Brexit was finished, gone, it wasn't going to happen. I set the party up, we got rid of Mrs May, we reset the agenda, and we are at least, at the end of January, going to get Brexit. I just hope and pray that Boris takes us towards a trade deal, and not a situation where we effectively become an associate member. But this morning's result is the best we could have hoped for.
One of the things that you had argued was that it was important for you to be represented so that you could hold the government's feet to the fire. You now don't have that power, do you?
No, that's absolutely right, and nor do the ERG, interestingly, because with a majority of this size, you know, 25 or 30 committed Eurosceptics have also effectively lost their influence. So, I mean, the truth of it is that Brexit will now be exactly what Boris Johnson wants it to be. I am absolutely certain that the vast majority of those 17.4 million want a genuinely clean break for the institutions, and we will have this debate, we will have this argument over the course of the next 6 months. But the big story, I think, is there will now not be a second referendum, and we are going to leave, and that is, in historical terms, big progress.
And the other big story is it's been an absolute triumph for Boris Johnson personally.
Yes, it has. I mean, look, get Brexit done was a good, simple slogan. I met lots of people on the doorsteps who just said, look, 3.5 years of this, it's agony. You know, whether it does get Brexit done, well, we'll find that out over the course of the coming weeks.
Well, are you winding, is that the end of the Brexit party? And if so, what happens to you?
I don't know the answer to that, Piers, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought after the 2016 referendum, that was it. I was done with it. I came back in because all appeared to be lost. If they make a complete Horlicks of it, I'll be back. If not, I'll say, look, I did my best to try and change the future direction of this country.
Lord Farage or US ambassador?
I don't think anything like that's going to happen, Piers.
Are you ruling that out?
Washington, for example?
Yeah, it's just not going to happen, okay?
Why
Simple
not?
as that. Because they, in a very odd psychological way, the Tories have always rather resented me. Don't forget that the Tories have been a Remainer party. They didn't want the referendum. They never thought they'd lose it. It's cost them a couple of prime ministers, and over half the cabinet are actually Remainers. So, you know, I don't have that many friends in high places.
Do you have any last thoughts for Hugh Grant and Steve Coogan and other celebrities, Lily Allen, the ones who were all trying to stop Brexit happening, who've woken up today to a rather bad morning?
Yeah, get back to acting, get back to singing. Oh, and do yourself a favour. Go outside the M25, and there you'll find people with very different views to you.
I'm sure they'll be highly receptive in a warm way to your thoughts. Nigel Farage, thank you very much.
Okay, so the takeaway from that for me is to see how Nigel Farage cares about the people. And the people made this vote.
Yeah.
They decided, listen, we believe and we trust in Boris Johnson that he's going to be able to get this done.
Just Boris, actually.
So I think that Nigel is being very magnanimous here. I think he's being very grown up, and I think he's being very honest. You know, he said, I'm going to call it half a loaf. Okay. We are going to get out. We will have Brexit. We will have it in some form. Now, when Piers asked him what happens to the Brexit party, and he honestly says, I don't know, because as much as leaving the European Union, if they get this bad deal with the EU, it may be a forever fight, like, you know, a 20-year fight to regain their own rights. Okay. So I think it'll be interesting to see moving forward. So I think that for Nigel, he saw what this represented, because everybody was saying people's views have changed. They only voted for Brexit because they didn't know what they were gonna get, and that's why we have to have this second referendum. And people came out in droves and in mass. Probably more than the 17.4 million that voted for Brexit.
This was a huge. This was like
probably came out and said
no election. Right.
Enough is enough, and that's what's so huge. You were going around the house last night, practically leaping. We're winning. We're winning. We're winning. We don't support Boris Johnson. It has nothing to do with Boris Johnson. It has everything to do with people waking up and saying enough is enough. We want sanity. We want right and righteousness to win out. We want populism. We want to put our own nations first.
Right.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
So Nigel sees that.
Yeah.
It's a win.
Do you know, I'm much happier seeing the exit poll where it is than seeing a hung parliament.
There must be a certain sadness, though, in you. Many people have credited you with Brexit. They say if it hadn't been for you, Mr. Cameron would never have put that referendum promise in the 2015 manifesto. And here we have an election result, which would...
This is what you want to see right here. Labour down 71 seats.
It's unbelievable.
Labour down 71 seats. It's huge. Conservatives up 50 seats, and they already had the majority.
Seem to make sure that Brexit, in some shape, is going to happen. And on this night, you're written out of the script.
Well, you can do what you like. I can tell you that if we'd stood in every seat in the country, it would have been a hung parliament. That would have been a disaster.
We'll never know that, of course.
Well, I think the Liberal Democrats would have won an awful lot of seats. And as I say, when you see the scores on the doors coming in the Midlands and the North, you will see lots of seats the Conservatives are going to win because we've taken a Labour vote that would never vote Conservative.
Do
you know,
absolutely
I'm much happier
Most
seeing the
underrated politicians, Nigel Farage there. Hard left socialism have been crushed tonight. Great news. This is a video that everybody keeps sharing over. If you guys don't know this, this is
Nicola Sturgeon. They kind of make fun of her.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure if you'd remember her name.
It's right there.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. She was caught on Sky News when she learned the Lib Dem leader. Jo Swinson was this Lib Dem leader who ran on a really socialist justice warrior platform. She wanted to make gender neutral passports, and she just really was talking about like this tiny subsection of transgenderism, and that's what she ran on. And this is the Scottish National Party leader reaction to when Jo Swinson loses that seat, to the Scottish National Party. It's like kind of funny. Nigel says graceless and nasty from Sturgeon. So, you know, stopping the second referendum with Nigel, I think that is his biggest win tonight. You're not going to have a second referendum.
Right.
That is one thing you can be dead on sure the Conservatives are not going to go for. And another thing we were talking about last night was that these new people that are in, these new seats, these 50 new seats are by Brexiteers. Yeah. You have just even if the Conservative Party, as Nigel Farage was saying, is mostly Remain, you put in 50 Leavers.
Right.
At least that's what they were running on. Well, and that's what the people were voting them
That's
in
the
for.
thing. So I think people miss the fact that so many people, we just kind of assume that the Tory party, they were all for Leave. Do you realize that Theresa May was a Remainer?
Exactly.
I mean, come on. So the fact that 50 seats have been taken by people that want Brexit to happen.
I don't have the video up because I watched it live with Sky News, but they went down into some of these Labour heartlands and they asked an always Labour voter and who voted for Boris. They say Boris. They don't say Boris Johnson. They don't say the Tories. They don't say Conservatives. They voted for Boris because they wanted Boris to get Brexit done. He could very well be in power for the next 5 years.
I know.
You could see the next 5 years an entirely different form of government in the UK than what you've seen. And you're not going to see the Marxism. You're not going to see the anti-Semitism. You're not going to see the kowtowing to Palestinian. You're not going to see the kowtowing to terrorism. You're going to get your government back. And in the process, what you're going to do, what you have done, last night we had Geert Wilders tweeting out a photo and says next, the Netherlands next. I don't know if the Netherlands are quite behind Geert as much as the British people are, but everybody knew, everybody in the EU knew that so goes the UK, so goes the rest of the EU. There is no European Union without the UK. There literally is no European Union. You can't hold it together with France and Germany. Germany's government's on the rocks. Merkel is on her way out. Macron can barely hold, his country is teetering yellow vest protests every single weekend.
Do you have Trump's tweets?
Happy?
Yeah, I mean, Trump is just so excited. He's tweeting out about the like all the deals that are going to be made between the U.S. and the U.K.
Celebrate Boris! Trump hails UK election result. Massive new trade deal after Brexit. U.S. President Donald Trump has hailed Prime Minister Boris Johnson's great win in Britain's general election, anticipating a British-American free trade agreement, which will put Britain's commercial arrangement with the European Union in the shade. He says this. Go ahead.
Congratulations to Boris Johnson on his great win. wrote President Trump, who is a pro-border, pro-sovereignty nationalist and has been a longtime supporter of the Brexit movement. Britain and the United States will now be free to strike a massive new trade deal after Brexit. This deal has the potential to be far bigger and more lucrative than any deal that could be made with the EU, he added. Celebrate Boris.
So literally, I'm going to bed and
it's like 1:30 or whatever.
I'm looking at my phone right before I go to sleep and I'm like, Donald Trump tweeted out 9 minutes ago. At 1 a.m. So I guess I went to bed at a quarter after 1 or whatever. And there's Donald Trump up at 1 a.m. watching these election results, tweeting this out. It was just a massively exciting evening. Watching everybody, you know, just chew on it, to chew and macerate this idea that globalism is dying, and then have it percolate through the rest of the day and through the morning. And then everybody kind of woke up today. I believe as the newscasters kind of woke up today and said, okay, we got to move on. Antifa was out in droves. We still had people saying we need another vote because that vote, the people weren't represented. This was the people's vote, by the way. This was the people's vote. This was the second referendum. Do you really want Brexit? This was, in essence, this was definitely a do you really want Brexit?
Right.
And people and Labour voters were saying we want Brexit so much, we'll vote for Boris Johnson. That's how much we mean it.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll see where this goes. I have this Sky News interview here with Nigel, so let's play this.
Come in. There was some fear that the entrance of the Brexit.
Oh, and by the way, I wish we would play more Australian news. They're so level-headed. They follow UK politics. They follow European politics, and they're the most sane of them all. They have their own social justice warriors and their craziness, but their newscasters are most of them lean more conservative and sane.
Yeah,
like they don't.
I agree.
I watched them do a segment on like. They had a preschool had a pirate to celebrate Christmas because they didn't want Santa Claus there because it might offend some people, and they're like, again really.
Party in this election would split the Conservative vote and therefore deny the Tories a majority. That has not happened. Looking at seats like Workington, Peterborough, there was a 21% swing against Labor, and the Brexit Party picked up 20% of that.
Yeah.
You're obviously not surprised by that.
No, I'm not. But the trouble is, our media is dominated by London. This little square mile that we're in right now.
She just talked about some areas where Brexit Party picked up 20% of the vote.
Yeah, that's huge.
And they all basically have breakfast together, lunch together, speak to each other. They all sort of intermarry, and they all come from a similar background, and they just don't really get what happens once you get outside of London into the country. I knew in this election that having dragged the Conservative Party kicking and screaming, because don't forget, they were Remainers. The Tory Party was a Remainer party. I dragged the Tory Party kicking and screaming into a Brexit position. I knew that if they stood so...
That was the key. Do you understand? It's not about the elections, okay? What I saw, what we all saw, what we covered, and I don't know how many other people covered it. We watched Nigel. We covered Nigel probably more than anybody else because we just love this guy. But we watched him.
It sounded like you said we love this guy.
We just love this guy. We just love this guy. We watched him all summer long. Okay, we watched what he did. We watched what he did with the creation of this Brexit Party. What he just said, he said, we pushed the Conservatives into a Brexit stance. They literally stole his campaign slogans. They stole the colors. They stole the ideas. Everything Nigel did, then they went out and they did. They even had Boris coming into some music into the, you know what I mean? Like, seriously, they literally tried to take everything that Nigel was doing and to take it. And because they took the Brexit position, this is why they had the sweep.
Yeah.
And they would not have had to do that. They would not. Theresa May would still be prime minister if it wasn't for Nigel Farage. He is owed that. He's owed that credit.
True.
There would be what he did with those European elections. 6 weeks he created a party and he swept the EU seats. Is that something not to be talked about? The Conservatives didn't win a seat.
Yeah.
Maybe just a few. The Brexit Party swept the European Union seats.
Yeah.
In the Euro election.
Right.
Swept it. It's 6 weeks he had a party. 6 weeks! 6 weeks! Okay? And Boris Johnson saw that. The Conservatives saw Theresa May saw that. That's what made her step down.
Yeah.
That's what made, they knew that Theresa May could not lead the people through Brexit They needed to have the Boris Johnson to lead the people through Brexit. Because of their snobbery and things like that, Nigel's kind of been pushed away. But that's okay because he pushed them into the right position.
Exactly.
And sometimes that's the most important and the most difficult thing to do.
Right.
They were going to deliver Brexit. The Conservatives would vote for them, and some Labour would vote for them. But I also knew there are lots of working class Labour voters, former mining communities, people like that, who would not vote Conservative if you paid them. You know, their families have voted Labour since the end of the First World War in 1918, but they will vote for me. So I knew I could rip chunks out of Labour, and I said, you know, a month ago, I'm going to go to the north of England and take apart Jeremy Corbyn. And by doing that, by taking lots of Labour votes, Conservatives are winning seats with no increased vote share. So, you know, I have done them a huge favour on all levels.
I spoke to a Lib Dem MEP on the programme just a short time ago. She said, when it comes to leader Jo Swinson, the reason that she didn't pop or set the world on fire was it was an element of sexism in the campaign. Is that right?
Complete and utter nonsense. The idea that Britain is a sexist country, goodness me, we had a female Prime Minister earlier this year. It's rubbish. And I think when people make excuses like that, it's pretty poor. The reason the Lib Dems have bombed is because Jo Swinson was unknown to the general public. They launched the campaign. They called it Jo Swinson's Liberal Democrats. Well, if half the country had never heard of her, what's the point of it? They bombed.
Also, it was interesting to talk to this Lib Dem MEP. What happens, they don't seem to be willing to give up the dream of staying in the European Union without the results coming in, but we can kind of see the writing on the wall here. Is there a fear that, you know, politics remains as split as it is now, that Labor and the Lib Dems somehow team up, and in 5 years' time we're back here and they're promising to reunify you with the EU?
It's done. It's over. The war is over. It's finished. We're leaving.
What happens if there's a shock to the economy? Do you think that argument could resurface in 5 years?
Do you know what? We have now had 4 major elections in 5 years. 3 general elections and a referendum.
We know what that's like.
For us, unprecedented in our history to have been through political crisis like this. What we will now have is 5 years of relative stability at a time when the European Union and the Eurozone is going through a really, Germany in particular, going through a bad time. So do you know what? Whatever happens economically around the world, comparatively tonight, we're in a much better place than the European Union, and that's why sterling's gone through the roof.
Yes, it has. Are you a unionist?
Oh yes, I am a unionist, but I'm concerned about the future row of Scotland that is coming. Scotland is going massively towards a separatist point of view.
You're going to see that Nicola Sturgeon is now asking for a Scottish referendum to leave Great Britain.
And the deal that David Cameron wants to do gives Northern Ireland a different constitutional status. It'll be within 3 days that the Scots are asking for the same thing. So,
well, that's right. I mean, for someone who, you know, would argue that mandate.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of give you that. This was the war is over for Brexit here. Let's see. All right. We're going to cover Antifa in just a second. I think we played that. So this is Tatiana McGrath. If you guys don't know, she's a parody account. And
hi, I'm Jeremy.
She says, I genuinely don't understand how Jeremy Corbyn could have lost. He announced his pronouns and everything.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party. My pronouns are he, him. Hi, I'm Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party. My pronouns are he, him. Hi, I'm Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party. My pronouns are he, him.
Because nobody cares about your stinking pronouns.
Everybody
cares.
You're he, him. Like, the fact that you announced it makes you look like a nincompoop. Like, a poopy nincompoop. Like, it's just embarrassing.
It's like this. Hello, my name is Michelle Svensson, and I have ears and a nose.
It is exactly like that.
And I have ears and a nose. I just wanted you to know that I have ears and a nose. Just so you know.
So here's the tweet from Donald Trump. Congratulations to Boris Johnson on his great win. The United States will, Britain and the United States will now be free to strike a massive new trade deal after Brexit. Celebrate Boris there. Let's see.
We're winning, and it's
We
so
are
fun.
winning. We are the winners. We beat the beaties and the winners and the winners. Okay, so yeah, here we'll go ahead and bring the rioting from the Antifa. This is Antifa rioting in London following the large electoral wins because we believe in the people's vote.
Listen to that like wicked laughing.
You might be on the wrong side of history. Those are your guys.
Well, and I kind of feel sorry for a lot of these Antifa people because it's not their fault that they were raised in a system that has left them unable to cope with reality.
That's true.
You know, it's like most kids are it's God's gift for children to be raised in a stable environment with truth and God and reality, and when you have that, you can grow up to become a stable adult. And they didn't get that.
So F. Boris, they said Antifa protesters clashed with police outside Downing Street as furious leftists revolt. There's some more outside Downing Street. The healing that Boris Johnson wants has begun. You know, what Boris Johnson was talking about, that the healing begin is between normal people. You're never going to do any healing. Antifa, if they get in power, they will destroy you. You know, there's no healing with that. We're talking about the labor people, the working class people, and the conservative people, and we're just talking about healing the country and moving on with the Antifa doesn't count in the healing.
I know.
Like, their whole MO is destroy, destroy, destroy. Even if they get in power, all they want to do is destroy, 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 right? I think we heard that one. That was the same wicked laugh we heard before. Clashes with police also broke out on Parliament Street.
I'm kind of curious when these Antifa people get out and they make these displays. Do they not believe in democracy? Like, what do they expect to accomplish? Like, should an entire nation listen to you who are out of control over a democratic vote?
Exactly.
You know, like, I could understand if there was literal dictatorship, or maybe if they believed that there was voter fraud, right? Like, and maybe they do. Maybe that's going around amongst their circles. But when people actually go out and vote, you can't really... Like, okay, if Hillary Clinton had won our election, I would have been really upset, and I would have been very vocal about it, because I believe that there was voter fraud involved.
I believe there was, yeah.
But with this, we've seen zero evidence of voter fraud. Quite the opposite, actually. We've seen far more legitimate voting in the UK than what we have here in the United States. You know?
Somebody says, Boris Johnson can F off if he thinks he can heal me. I'm a European. I am not a one-nation Tory. I'm not a little Englander. I will never reconcile with the Tory government, who, after 9 years of hurt, has decided that the country needs to come together. So this is these anti-Boris protests, and they're just basically people who are sore losers. All right, here we have Mommy Merkel.
Here, Britt Boss says, Michelle, these Antifa kids are indoctrinated by the teachers in the UK schools because all teachers unions in the UK are supporters of Labour and effectively demand the teachers vote Labour by using pressure.
Oh, sure. So we go to, there's our hats for Merkel.
Oh my gosh, where did you put them?
Here's they go. So we got these from Dale Jones.
Okay, now we assumed they were from you, Dale. Then somebody came in the chat and was like wondering, like, you know.
Okay, so these are, what are they called again?
German.
Prussian and German military helmets. We have now decided, since you guys know we've got a lot of, we have British hats, we've got our Swedish hats. This is now the hat we put on when we go to the bad guys. Okay, this is literally a German hat. So we are going to listen to Mommy Merkel here in our bad guy hat.
Were pleased at the fact that this was a clear outcome, that we're not again facing a situation with a hung parliament where you can't make headway in either direction. Of course, we all continue to deplore the fact that Great Britain has decided to leave the European Union, but in a way we have achieved some certainty now that the withdrawal agreement that we have been drafting will apply. The fact that Great Britain is leaving the European Union is a reality. Well, the situation has improved when you compare it to the situation 3 months ago. And then, of course, there is professional recognition for the fact that Boris Johnson has succeeded in convincing the majority of the British citizens. The British system of election and voting is different from the German system, thus the victories tend to be more clear-cut. But as I said, I have to pay my respects here, chapeau, as the French say, that he has managed to achieve this result given the circumstances. And of course, given the situation we find ourselves in, it's good to have a Prime Minister who has a strong mandate and who is then able to negotiate with us and thus have a chance to make sure that what divided and drove much into Great Britain and its people to unite that to a greater degree, because that is what I would wish to see happen.
Sure, that's what
to allow a country like Great Britain to become and continue to be a good partner for the European Union. The gentleman right next to you. Thank you, James Crisp of the...
So I have to say that her speech concerns me a lot.
Why is she so concerned?
Why is she so happy?
Boris Johnson. It's a good question.
I think that she may have
something up her sleeve. She knows that the deal that Boris Johnson has on the table is a Remain deal. Okay? So she is happy either way, but there is silver lining. The people want no deal Brexit. They do not want Boris Johnson's deal. So we shall see where this shall go. Our bad guy segment is over.
I really love these hats.
I do. Maybe we have bad guy in us.
Maybe we have bad guy in us.
Defeat Jeremy Corbyn.
All right. So where did it all go wrong? Where did it all go wrong? And Labour says, how'd we lose all them seats? It was all Jeremy Corbyn's fault.
Yeah, well,
he had a lot on his shoulders, but come on, Labour. If you had pushed him towards Brexit, you would not have lost all those seats. You could have actually put Jeremy Corbyn in office. What is more important? Knowing that Brexit is going to happen, wouldn't it have better to have it be under Jeremy Corbyn for you all? That is the essence of the insanity. They don't know how to play tactically.
Okay, so I actually, let me pull up something here. So Horatio took today off of work.
Was you having a party?
He stayed up all night long.
Yes, everybody did. I'm sure. Were you drinking too?
What he probably was.
You're so happy you had to, you had to celebrate.
But I asked him if Jeremy Corbyn had known that it was going to happen. Like, I said, so did Corbyn know that this was going to happen, do you think? And he says no. They're Marxists. They have zero introspection. Their whole attention 100% of the time is on their enemies. They are so obsessed that they not only cannot compute, it doesn't even enter their heads that they would need to compute, that people don't necessarily see the world the way that they do. And I was just blown away by how accurate that is. And I think about it a lot, actually.
That's what's happening with the left right now over here in America.
Yeah, but I hadn't put it into those words even in my own head. And I was like, duh, they get so obsessed. Like, they just don't have any introspection. That's the word I was lacking. They don't ever look at themselves. They are always on their enemy. They are always so focused. It's what's happening to the Democrat Party here in the United States. It's what's happening with the impeachment process. And they don't realize that it's like every movie you see where the bad guy will keep fighting and fighting and fighting and not realizing that he's dying and he just can't stop the fight. He has no idea that what he's doing is actually his own self-destruction.
Cost you your job tonight?
Probably.
Absolutely.
Did Jeremy Corbyn cost you your job tonight?
Has Jeremy Corbyn cost you your job tonight?
Probably.
Absolutely, completely. Defeat is in some respects a blessed relief.
Some of the 59 Labour MPs who've lost their jobs, clear where the blame lies. As for the leader who led his party into the wilderness, no great mea culpa.
Mr. Corbyn, do you take personal responsibility for the defeat? Mr. Corbyn?
Cries of support, not a universal sentiment.
If you guys didn't know this, Jeremy Corbyn said that he is going to resign from leadership of the Labour Party. He hasn't resigned yet, but he will not be, he said for sure he will not lead into another general election.
So we don't know how long he'll stay leader, though, because this could be like 5 years away.
Right.
He might not step down until the very, right before the very next.
Party and its future direction started in our studios even before the night was out.
Corbyn was a disaster on the doorstep. Everyone knew that he couldn't lead the working class out of a paper bag. Now John's developed this momentum group, this party within a party. I want him out of the party. I want momentum gone. Go back to your student politics.
Momentum has, captured the energy and enthusiasm of the hundreds of thousands of people who've joined the Labour Party in support of precisely the
From Mr. Corbyn's side of the party, a determination that anything bar the leader is to blame.
What about Mr. Corbyn's leadership? Did that play a role? I don't think so. I think on the policy issues we won the argument, but we literally couldn't break through Brexit.
Are you going to stand aside, Mr. Corbyn?
Jeremy Corbyn would like to ensure he stays long enough to hand over to a successor in his mould. He won't be thrilled by these two not ruling themselves out.
What you said was, do you think that you could be the leader of the Labour Party? And of course the answer to that question is, of course somebody like me could be the leader of the Labour Party.
Would you like to be the next leader?
Well, I think this is the time for reflecting and understanding the result. I don't underestimate the size of the task ahead.
Jeremy Corbyn's advisor Seamus Mill not keen to explain his role in the disaster.
Why don't you accept responsibility for it, Mr. Mill? It was your strategy. You're just running away.
That guy can't be blamed. Corbyn is Corbyn, like regardless of.
But they don't see their era as over yet.
Advisors.
Romilly Weeks, ITV News.
Nobody wants you, Jeremy. Like, nobody, okay? He is the worst possible. But that one guy was right. Like, we couldn't break through Brexit, and that's their biggest downfall. Like, you actually said, maybe Corbyn could have won. If they had embraced Brexit and literally said, all right, the people have voted, this is what we're going to do.
Their best strategy that they could have done for the Conservative Party is to not embrace Brexit.
Exactly. I'm talking about their side. If they wanted
to have power, if they wanted to shape Brexit was going to happen.
Yeah.
They would have embraced Brexit. They could have won, and now they're done. And this is what's happening to the Democrats. If the Democrats had run on some issues, right? If the Democrats had been doing some good things, the Democrats could have shown that, you know what? Maybe Donald Trump is this and that and this and that, but we're going to get things done. We're going to take the higher ground. We're going to be the better people.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, people would have flocked to them. But with this impeachment, they have literally soured every taste. You say Democrat, everybody in the country except for those with the Trump derangement syndrome, which is not the whole, which is only 25% of the country. Donald Trump is going to, what they've done is even with the voting fraud, even with all the crazy things, even with the mainstream media, even with censoring us, that's all the different things that they did to the Conservatives. 2016 was a bellwether with Brexit happening, and then Donald Trump got elected. And everybody with a brain could know and see that this was going to happen. Right? And so with Donald Trump and the Republicans, I don't want to be a prophet. I'm just going to say it like it is. If Brexit is any indicator, the Republicans are going to sweep. They're going to sweep. But because what the Democrats have done here is the same thing that the Labor did over there. And you're going to have some Democrats that get in. But you guys, this impeachment thing, just like with the anti-Brexit thing, it is Pharaoh and God hardening their hearts to make them look so bad.
Exactly what it is.
So bad that Donald Trump looks like George stinking Washington. all of a sudden, and Mike Cernovich pointed out, Donald Trump hasn't been able to fulfill his promises. He's wishy-washy on a lot of stuff. He goes back and forth. He's hired a lot of neocons. He's had Rex Tillerson in, Mattis in and out, John Kelly in and out. You know, all these people. But the one thing that what happens when you have a common enemy and you see that enemy going after you and your leader, you put away all other issues. All other issues are to the side. And now even we have Mike Huckabee saying that because of the impeachment, he could run for a third term. It's in the Constitution.
What?
It's in the Constitution. Because of the impeachment, he could possibly run for a third term. If they mess up his one term and he's still in office, he could possibly run for a third term. It's really, yeah, he could possibly do
Hang on. So if they impeach him in the House.
Yes.
But not in the Senate.
Yeah, he could run for a third term.
This is a joke.
This is not a joke.
It cannot be real.
It is real.
Oh my gosh.
With their worst results since the 30s, the political recriminations begin and the search for a new leader. Let's take a look at the result by numbers. With all seats declared, the Conservatives have 365 MPs. Labour has 203, fewer than Michael Foot won in the 1983 election. The SNP will have 48 seats and the Lib Dems just 11. All that means Boris Johnson will enjoy a majority of 80.
So they can't read this, but that's Conservative, Labour, SNP, Lib Dems. What's the PC one?
I'm not sure.
And then the Green Party.
Labour have lost 59. The SNP picked up 13 and the Lib Dems are down 1. Boris Johnson...
Oh, shoot. That's what I meant to do.
Obviously very...
You went to the other video. Go forward.
The Lib Dems are down 1. Their only seat they lost was their leader.
In us and in me, and we will work round the clock to repay your trust and to deliver on your priorities with a parliament that works for you.
Watched by his team, including advisor Dominic Cummings, he called on the nation to come together.
I frankly urge everyone on either side of what are, after 3.5 years, after all, an increasingly arid argument, I urge everyone to find closure and to let the healing begin.
Ian Levy, the Conservative Party candidate, 17,000.
It was a night of Tory wins in seats Labour thought it could not lose, like Blythe Valley. Bassett Law too, the drawn-out saga of Brexit driving Leave-supporting Labour backers into the arms of the Tories. But you couldn't, some said, park all the blame on Brexit.
It wasn't just about Brexit, it was also wider about the perceptions of the party and the leadership.
Has Jeremy Corbyn cost you your job tonight?
Yes, absolutely, completely. But I shouldn't be surprised in that because Jeremy Corbyn and I have very, very little in common. We just both happen to be members of the Labour Party.
Corbyn was a disaster on the doorstep.
Okay, so
everyone knew.
Back in number 10, Dominic Cummings has been leading the planning for domestic policy. Some in Whitehall worry what he might have in store. This morning, cameras caught him offering his hand to the Cabinet Secretary, Sir Mark Sedwill.
Irrefutable, irresistible, unarguable decision of the British people. And with this election, I think we put an end to all those miserable threats of a second referendum.
He insists he wants to meld one nation. But looking at how Leave and Remain seats voted differently, you see how difficult that might be. If you look at the seats that voted strongly for Leave, 60% plus, there was a much bigger swing to the Tories here. If it was up to them, if all the seats behaved like these, the Tories would have 118 majority now. Look at seats that voted strongly for Remain in the referendum and the swings are different. If it was down to them, the Tories would be clinging on with a majority of 6. As it is, he's back with 80. A whole new voter base he must please. A timetable for EU trade negotiations many think unachievable. A massive majority that gives a leader authority to act. Not seen in this place for some years.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Conservative MP Gillian Keegan, and I began by asking her how Boris Johnson can unite the country when the election results suggest it is still bitterly divided.
I don't think the votes do suggest it's bitterly divided. I mean, you know, we've been talking about one nation conservatism. We actually represent every nation. We have more seats in Wales now. We have 6 seats still in Scotland. We've got seats in the northeast, the northwest. We've got seats in the Midlands. We've got seats all over the country. So we represent every part of the country. We represent every different type of people in the country as well, from every different socio-demographic. So that's the start. If you're talking about leave and remain, how you unite those people who still may feel they want to remain, then the answer there is to do a sensible Brexit, a good deal with the EU, and make sure the voices of the 4 nations, and particularly young people, are heard.
So we're going to stop.
All right. So on YouTube, Kevin says, I'm from the Northeast England. I voted Conservative in the Bishop Auckland seat. We now have a Conservative MP, and let me tell you, I'm so happy right now. This was a Labour seat since 1925.
The numbers that Barry was sending me last night, the numbers where the Labour seats were falling and falling. This wasn't 1 seat. This wasn't 2 seats. This wasn't 3 seats. 59 seats. Only 13 of those went to the Scottish National Party. They all went Conservative. It is mind-boggling to see this
speaking
happening.
of Barbaza, he says the figure of people voting Tory last night, the number was 14 million votes. Voters voted the Tories to power last night. That's 3.5 million less than the Brexit referendum in 2016. Tories are Brexit party now. And I think that's huge. On Periscope, on Twitter, Tom says, the world is sick of communism and socialism. I'm proud of Britain. Story says, Merkel causes me to puke, and that we had just described snowflakes. That's from 11 minutes ago. Refocus as well said, Michelle, lives around the world are ill in the same ways. Refocus says, wouldn't be surprised if angry Labour copies Pelosi and opens impeachment hearings against Boris. I hope not.
They're already saying he's a Russian stooge.
Tom says, people are sick of atheism, homosexuality, open borders, and Britain showed that. Refocus says, just hope Boris doesn't forget his base like career politicians do and blow his big
I think he
chance.
probably will. But you know what, guys? I wanted you to keep an eye on something. When Donald Trump was elected, and he's made a lot of missteps, the globalist lost because he wasn't a globalist. He may make some missteps and do things that we don't like, but the globalism, it's the globalism, the hold, it's a satanic, demonic hold over people's minds, telling worldwide people what to do, and you need to have freedom. I want to go over some of these seats that were amazing that were lost. Labour's Dennis Skinner, the infamous beast of Bolsover, lost his seat to the Tories after an astonishing 49 years in Parliament. The former miner was a staunch socialist but a firm Brexiteer. One of only a very few in the Parliamentary Labour Party, and admired across the political spectrum for his independence of mind. And he lost his seat. The people did not believe in him because they didn't believe that his vote would sway. You have the former Labour Party Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, saying that Boris Johnson's predicted landslide victory spells the end for Jeremy Corbyn, blaming the loss on the Jewish vote. If you didn't want to look anti-Semitic, you're not going to say it was the Jewish vote. The Jewish vote wasn't very helpful. Oh my gosh. Listen to this. The Tories take Tony Blair's former constituency. The Conservative Party has taken the constituency of Sedgefield, once held by a former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair, signaling the scale of the swing against the left-wing party.
Wow.
They took, and Corbyn is going to step aside.
Who knows when that will happen, though?
Let's see. The DUP Westminster leader loses the Belfast North. That was kind of Nigel Dodds, leader of the Democratic Unionist Party Westminster contingent, has lost his Belfast North seat. The pro-Brexit Socially Conservative Party, which favors maintaining the union between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, made a so-called confidence and supply arrangement with the Conservatives after Theresa May lost her parliamentary majority in 2017, but he lost his seat to a Conservative, but still. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, and it's pretty powerful.
The weight that this gives, it's very difficult when votes happen in Parliament when the parties are so close, because it makes it difficult for the government, which if you're not from the UK, you don't understand what that means. They literally call the leading party the government, right? It makes it very difficult for the government to do anything that it promised the people that it would do, because the votes are so close. But with such a wide margin, and with all of these new seats being staunch Brexiteers who were elected, I think, like you said, you're going to see, it's not just about Boris Johnson and whether he's establishment or whatever.
Right.
Oh my. Okay, so we're going to need a...
Oh, sorry. No, I don't even have to read it. I didn't even know that RT has that horrible article up. I'll just read down here. This is from George Galloway, who was a former MP. He said
they don't have him saying it because his accent is...
I know.
Amazing.
All my warnings have been vindicated, Galloway added, as if to prove Galloway's point. The news of a first seat seized by Conservatives came from the traditional Labour heartland, Blythe Valley, which they held ever since the constituency was formed in 1950. The EU will now have to abandon its foot dragging with regard to Brexit and realize that Britain is not going to change its mind, Galloway said. That idea is now a dead duck. Britain will leave 1 year from now. The former MP said that if Johnson is sensible, he will use the break from the EU to repair relations with the rest of the world, including Russia and China. And I would say no with China, but whatever. And the special relationship with the United States. And he doesn't blame Corbyn for everything. It was a Brexit. It was a Brexit thing. It's totally Brexit. Let's see. Lesson for Trump in UK election is pro-working class economic agenda wins. President Donald Trump should adopt a Johnson-style platform from Nigel-style platform from his 2020 presidential re-election 2020 presidential re-election campaign to unify working class and middle class voters on the issues of government administered services and immigration reform, said Washington Post columnist Henry Olsen. Very interesting. Olsen, like Thursday's general election to the United Kingdom to the 1980 presidential election. This is the 1980 election where working class Democrats who had been Democrats by heritage, who would never think about voting for Republican, decided in mass to give Ronald Reagan a try. Ronald Reagan won the working class areas. And I think that one of the things it is difficult to do, and I'm trying not to do it as much, is to look back at past elections and say that that's what's going to happen now. Because Donald Trump isn't Ronald Reagan and we're not in 1980. But at the same time, we can look at what's happening worldwide. We can see that there is a populist movement, a nationalist movement, a movement to, hey, bring jobs back home. We've been spread too thin. We've been sending jobs over to China. People are, very interestingly enough, people are overweight and poor. And they're barely scraping by because we've been sold a bill of goods and everything comes from China, and then our things are breaking and all these crazy things. Exclusive from Oritz, Boris Johnson election victory is bad news for Democrats. Boris Johnson's and that is by far truth. And so we don't need to go back in the annals of history to see that today that this is actually horrible news for Democrats and great news for the rest of the world. Boris Johnson's dominant election victory in the UK. This was, Michelle pointed this out, this wasn't a little election. This was a domination. This was a domination. This was people trying to wrap your brain around people who have never voted for a conservative said, I want out of the EU that bad. There I go. Right?
But more than that, though, it wasn't just people voting conservative that had never voted conservative before. The way that it worked was the Brexit Party stole Labour's votes, which enabled the Conservative Party, who didn't get a massive uptick of votes, to actually have the majority. So really, Nigel was vital to what he did. And I think that it's a shame the way that the media is covering this. And I'm hoping that our viewers that are watching it from the UK are giving Nigel his kudos that he deserves, that you wouldn't be in this situation right now. There wouldn't be a huge conservative win right now.
Boris Johnson's taking the victory, but it was Nigel.
It was absolutely Nigel and his Brexit
Conservatives
party.
were going to vote conservative.
The fact that people can't see that, it just boggles my mind. They don't want to admit
lost by Labour were because people voted for the Brexit party.
Yeah.
And that's why the Labour seats were lost.
Yeah.
Okay. And some people did vote conservative.
I'm just saying, but by and large, you could maybe even if you just split it down 50-50, whatever, Nigel gets a huge amount of credit here.
So Johnson romped to a majority government in the biggest conservative victory since Lady Thatcher in the 1980s. The win was just the latest for the silent majority that wants good governance, in contrast to the bellicose activists who desire socialism. Like Midwestern voters in the U.S. in 2016, working class voters in the economically distressed industrial areas of northern England, traditionally a Labour Party constituency, pulled the lever for a Conservative Party that will give them a hand up, not a hand out. The Labour Party was decimated, winning its fewest seats since 1935. The outcome should make Democrats nervous. The Labour Party candidate Jeremy Corbyn is a socialist, and AOC at the last minute was like, hey, vote for Jeremy, right? Probably didn't really help. Is a socialist who promised to nationalize vast swaths of the UK economy. He enjoys support from adolescents, activists, and actors, but not ordinary workers. He's a dour and depressing person.
Curmudgeon.
In other words, he would be right at home in the Democratic presidential primary field. So the UK results also demonstrate how viewers want charismatic leaders in the mold of Johnson and Trump, who embody the national spirit. Warren, Sanders, and their travelers, by contrast, have about as much personality as the average government bureaucrat. Biden called Johnson a physical and emotional clone of Trump. That's a bit much, but their spirits are kind of there. And Trump is way smarter than Boris Johnson.
Oh my gosh.
He's so much smarter.
So speaking of the Trump Johnson connection there, here's my hope, and I want to be optimistic going forward because I don't like Boris Johnson and I don't trust him, and I do believe that he sways with where the power lies. And I think the optimism here is that Donald Trump is such a large character, and even though on the world stage, some may make fun of him, they actually all respect him and they all fear him and they all revere him. And so I'm hoping that Boris Johnson will actually create policy to try to impress Trump.
Yeah. Corbyn ally admits Brexit stole Labour votes. Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, John McDonnell, admitted that Labour lost votes because of left-wing leavers switched to the Brexit Party. Speaking to Sky News on Friday morning, the Marxist said the party faced its worst defeat since 1935 because Brexit dominated the whole debate. We couldn't break through on the issues, so I think it was Brexit. And if you look at what's happened in most of the seats, particularly in the northern seats, the votes showed shifts have been from Labour to Brexit Party rather than the Tories. We just couldn't get through the Brexit argument, basically. Wow. Mr. McDonnell denied that Jeremy Corbyn's leadership or his policies were to blame. Brexit Party leader Nigel Farage stood down his candidates in target Tory seats, but continued to challenge Labour in the Leave heartlands in the North Midlands and Wales. Speaking to Sky News, he said, I know there were a lot of Labour voters, so I am so excited. I'm so excited for all of you guys. This is a great win. It's against globalism. It's against the European Union.
Do you want me to play the Turley video?
Maybe we'll save that for Sunday, because we'll still have to cover this again on Sunday. So we'll save that for Sunday. We're going to move on to the U.S. because we have the day that you guys, Friday the 13th, celebrated your victory. We had our Judiciary Committee take a break in the middle of the night, wait till the morning, specifically so that they could air it so more people would see it, to vote to bring articles of impeachment against our very own president. So we have we're kind of going back and forth here in the crazy world. But actually, before I'm done, I want to bring up some tweets. Just to kind of see where I want you to see where other people are.
So Kevin says Scotland had once in a generation to leave the UK. Now they want another.
Right.
David Nemeth says globalism equals communism. Stuart the Brit says Boris will try and keep the future talks with the EU in back rooms and out of the public domain while ripping this country off. I kind of agree with you there. I'm hoping for better. Mikey B says, watch Boris tackle in the football for England against Germany. You'll like him then. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens as we move forward. But I think that Brexit is going to happen and we don't have to worry about a second referendum, and that's huge.
So here we have somebody with a little blue check mark saying, liberal world when they are not in power. Democracy is in danger. Constitution is a threat. Is that a threat? Elections are rigged. Post-truth world. UK election baiting. When the liberals aren't in power, everything is bad. Here we have the EU, Brexit, Scotland. I don't know exactly what this one is supposed to mean. Key point in the UK election, getting lost in the fray. Conservatives got less than 44% of the votes. Yet they took 56% of the seats. Oh, tyranny of the minority. I don't know if Jill Stein is quite right about that. You vote in your constituency because that's what you do. That's the whole point. Let's see. Here's a UK voter intention by age, so you can see the Labour votes there, younger and then older. I think people are just smarter. They realize what socialism is, and this is what I wanted you to see. Abandoning ship, Gert Wieler says, Nexit next. So here we have the EU as going over.
I'm hoping that is
Merkel
correct.
at the top of the staff, regulations, globalists, and then Brexit. And I remember saying, sail away, Britain, sail far, far away.
Smile Point on Periscope says, agree that Johnson is totally unreliable, but hopefully his ego will lead him to emulate Trump.
Yeah.
I hope you're right. We love you. God loves you. God bless.
I was cold.